Why hello there, Anxious Cynic, back again with another and our final tutorial of this Mine-imator tutorial series. And what we're going to do now that we've finished our animation, more or less, we are going to animate the cinematography and thus the camera for our scenes. If you watched my older Mine-imator tutorial series, then you probably saw the single camera setup that I was using, and I mentioned using a dual camera or a multi-camera setup, and that's what I'm going to try to do this time. So what we're going to go ahead and do is create another camera in our scene, and we're going to rename this camera to camera B. We're going to have an A camera and a B camera. We're going to go ahead and name the other one, the first one, camera A. All right, so there we go. And what we're going to do is go ahead and take camera B and move it out of our way. As you can see, the camera spawned where we had our viewpoint looking around. And of course, I can move the camera here just like any other object, or I can right click and hold and look around this way. I can use WASD. If you're used to playing PC games such as Minecraft, then you'll know how that works. I can just move it through walls and everything. The camera is completely unhindered by things like that. So I don't remember if I covered any of this before, but since this is the camera tutorial, we're going to go ahead and mention it. If you hold the shift key while you're moving around, it's a lot slower. See that? How slow that's going? If I let go, it moves pretty quickly. Shift, it moves slower. Like, this doesn't change. Like, you can't record like live camera movements within Mine-imator, but it makes fine-tuning your angles a little better. So if I was trying to position the camera this way, then if I was trying to get it lined up just right, it might be a little difficult. So if I hold shift, it gives me a little more fine-tuning. Of course, if you have a larger scene and you want to move the camera more quickly, or just, you're trying to look around or whatever, if you hold space, then it moves even faster. So this is kind of your sprint key, is holding the space key. So there you go. That's a couple little tips on how to use the camera there. We're going to go ahead and set this camera up. Also, if you use the Q and E keys, that's your up and down. And of course, space and shift, I think, apply with those as well. So if I hold shift, I was holding space. As you saw, it was very fast and hard to maneuver. But if I hold shift, then I can kind of finesse this here. Of course, you can just use, like if you go into your viewport here, you can just use this and move it to be more precise, or your numbers. Any of those things apply. I generally just use a combination of all those things. So basically what we're going to do here is we're going to start with our A camera, and it's going to be, let's say, let's move our A camera over here. We're going to have it kind of just facing down. Let's get our viewport here so we can see what we're doing. Let's just have it there, and our rotation on the y-axis, let's, zero that out. It was kind of spun around. So we're going to do that, and that all looks pretty good to me. One thing you're going to want to note, this is actually a comment I got recently, so it was very well timed, is when you are adjusting your camera, if you want depth of field, and you click on depth of field here, and you get your parameters, nothing changes. So you can mess with this and be like, well, what's going on, man? Why is nothing working? Well, the thing is, depth of field and certain camera effects do not show unless you render. See, now that we're rendering, the whole scene changes. And if I adjust our depth of field, then you get noticeable results. So if you're going to be doing depth of field, either, do your cinematography first and then come back and render and set that up, or, do it as you're going along, however you want to do it. But remember, if you have depth of fields selected or off for one keyframe, then any subsequent I can't talk today. Any subsequent keyframes that you create after that are going to inherit those traits. So let's say if I leave it off now, and then I come to this one, it's going to be off again. So if I forgot to turn it on here, and then all the keyframes I create for the camera after that are going to have it off, and you're going to have to select them all and turn it on and stuff like that. It can be a hassle, so just try to remember to double check that. Even when you do have it on, it can be easy to forget that your settings for each keyframe are tailored to where the camera's position is. So for instance, if I have the camera this close right now, and I have the depth, let's say I want a shallow depth of field. So I'm going to make the range about 20, and I'm going to leave the depth at 0, so you get this nice blur in the background. Well, the next shot may have the camera a good bit further from Steve, or I may change the field of view or something. Actually, I'm going to move it here. Let's have that one be about 40. So anyway, those things may change and your depth of field will be thrown off. So you definitely want to check your rendering and make sure that everything is in focus the way you want it to when you're doing that. It can be very easy to forget little things like that, and it'll be something you'll notice later and be like, dang it! And you'll have to go back and fix it. All right, so now that we got all that out of the way, what we're going to do here is try to edit these two cameras. I'm going to go ahead and turn on the depth of field for both cameras since we're rendering. And what I want to do, Steve is here. Let's just pretend he's going to try and wake up there. So we'll go into about the 80 frame area. And I'm going to have the B camera. Let's see. Yeah, we're going to go into our keyframe here, and we're going to turn off visible on the B camera. I'm going to come in here, and on frame 80, if I can select it, right there. On that frame, right here where B camera becomes visible again, we're going to have A camera go invisible. And obviously you can see this visual marker you get here with the gray to let you know what's what. And what that's going to do is if we deselect the camera, so now notice that this says active camera. If I select the keyframe, it's going to say selected camera, and you want to be mindful of that as well. If you have a camera selected, then you're not going to see the changes here. What you want to do is have them both deselected, and where this screen here is going to say active camera, and what that's going to do is only show you which camera is active at any given time. So with that said, you hit play, you're going to see that angle, and then boop, it's going to change to this one. And we definitely want this one moved. How about we do a cool angle? Like let's do something like that. I think that's a pretty cool angle right there. All right. So it's going to... All right, see how this happens here? Since I have this camera selected still, selected camera, it's showing us that keyframe movement between the two. That actually looks kind of cool, but we don't want that. So that whole movement there is not even going to be seen. That camera is not rendering at that point in time. So when we deselect it, you're going to see this, and it's just going to cut to that angle. Steve gets up, and probably around this point here, we're going to make this camera become visible again, and our B camera is going to go invisible again, and we're going to change the angle here. So on this one, we're going to move it, and let's see, what do we want to do? Maybe we'll have this one. We may not want a jarring camera angle, like the other one that we have is like right around here. So if you move to say here, it could work. It could be a little jarring. We'll try it and see though. Let's just say we want to have a nice little like angle here to show kind of a prelude to where Steve might be going with things. All right. So we're going to come back here. We're going to watch. Let's pretend his eyes are closed. They open. And here we go. We got to deselect our camera so we can see what it actually looks like. So his eyes open, maybe, pretend. Then this switches and it comes over here and he gets up. And then it comes to this angle as he turns. Let's actually move those a little bit further. I think that shot can last just a little bit longer. Let's see. See how I'm scrolling here with the keyframes and I'm watching as things happen. So I want the camera angle to kind of change about when he's gonna like basically when he's like kind of still for a moment, and as soon as he starts moving again, that's where I want that camera angle to change. So instead of frame 150, let's move it to 153. Yeah, that's not too bad. So he gets up, he's gonna come over here and do that. Let's see here. We want this this camera. We want to adjust the focus here. So let's say about 165 here. We're gonna go ahead and change our depth and bring Steve into focus. Let's just say about 27 or 29. Bring Steve into focus, and let's up our fade size to about 200 to make that a little bit better there. So what you'll see at this point in time, let's actually change the type of keyframe we have here. Let's make it this one to ease in and out. So you'll see there it changes focus from being just the thing up here to being Steve, but that's actually not really working that well for me either. I'm going to select both of these keyframes. Let's make the range 5. That's basically going to make the depth of field much shallower, so it's a lot more selective. And that's going to make Steve come into focus right around the 47 marker maybe. And for this one, we're going to do like this. Let's maybe make that 10, and we'll make the range 10 as well. That way, see, this is what I'm saying. Like, you got to kind of play with things a bit. And I want that to happen a little slower. So instead of having that ease in and out, let's do, let's try this one. Still kind of not doing it. What I could do is just add another keyframe here. Or let's copy this one, Control C, Control V, copy it. And let's have it actually, we'll just leave that there. And let's just have this on linear. Since we have this, we'll just put them back on linear. Yeah, stop showing that. It's kind of a quick thing. It's just going to work that way, I guess. I could also, let's just bring this out and kind of have it. Yeah, that actually might make a little more sense. We'll focus towards him once he's already churned. There we go. Yeah, that's a lot better. So it switches there, then it switches to focus on Steve. The only thing is I'm not digging his arm being out of focus there. So let's see if we can correct that. Maybe around 45. And then let's up this to 8 maybe. See how shallow we can get it. 7. 7 might work. All right. Then it switches to him. He hops up. And let's actually have it switch maybe right around here, 195. This one will go invisible again. And this one visible. And at this point in time, camera B will change. Let's just try it right about this angle. And the depth of field on this one, obviously, since the range is 200, is pretty forgiving. So we're just going to leave it on that and have this one kind of be our wide shot camera and stuff. So we'll do like that. It focuses on Steve. He hops up. And what we might want to have happen here when he hops up, let's right around here, we'll place a keyframe. And then when Steve hops up, maybe like right around here, we'll have this kind of angle up to follow him. Something like that. Let's maybe put a keyframe transition on there. Yeah, I'm not liking it. Hang on. What if we did this one and made it bounce a bit? That might be okay. Let's see. Maybe spread it out so it's a little... nah. 225 maybe. I don't know. I'm not liking that bounce. I mean, this isn't very important. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but just to give you an idea, there are little things you can do to improve your cinematography and make things happen in kind of an interesting way. the important thing to remember about cinematography, it seems like a lot of people don't think about this, especially when you're starting out with your animations. It's easy just to have the camera just fly around and things like that. But having it cut and, you have to remember that cinematography is the language of film, basically. Not that you're really getting that into it when you're just practicing with Mine-imator, but how you do the camera work is essentially how you tell your story. So, it's pretty important. It's more important than a lot of people seem to realize. And I just want to emphasize that for a moment. All right, so we're going to have it go invisible here again. And for this one, we'll become visible again. And let's see. Should we move it? What if we did like a crazy kind of top down in the corner kind of angle here? I don't know if that's working. Do like a Quentin Tarantino kind of movement. Yeah, let's just go with a cool, crazy angle like that. And let's bring our range up to about 15. Actually, you know what? That needs to be a lot higher. Let's make this one a wider angle. Maybe not quite that wide. Let's try 50. We do want some of the wall here to be out of focus. Let's bring this up so we can see a little better. Sorry about that. Should have done that sooner. We basically want Steve to be the main thing in focus and the floor here. We want to kind of give some depth to this wall here and soften it up by adding a fade size so that way it kind of fades more gradually. Looks a little bit better that way, in my opinion. So he walks over, he's going to do that, and as soon as he does the little thing right about there, we're going to go ahead and switch angles again. Now, this is kind of a Michael Bay cinematography thing we're doing with lots of cuts. Not that Michael Bay's the only director that does that, but you know what I mean. Let's try this kind of thing here. Right about there, maybe. Something like that. And maybe we'll come in a bit. Let's do 42. I don't know. 40 seemed all right. We'll try 40. Something like that. And once again, like this has got a pretty forgiving depth of field setting here. So, we can not have to worry too much about it. So he pulls it out, and then we do that transition. If you remember before with the instant transition, I said this can be covered up with cinematography. And that's exactly what we're going to do now. We're going to have camera A become visible again, and camera B is going to go invisible. All right. And basically what we're going to do is just have a nice wide angle of Steve's house here. Let's open up our depth of field. Maybe, since it's a wider shot on the outside, we'll kind of make that a little better. 240. It's not too bad. That might not be what I would use if I were making an actual animation here, but I think it works all right. There we go. We do have this delay here. I don't really know if it matters that much, but once again, like if you're doing this, let's go ahead and save our project. I assume you'll be editing this. Like you do have the ability to add sounds now in Mine-imator, but generally I do all of my sound stuff in post. So any little defects, if it lingers too long and you want to cut a few frames, that can be done, in post when you edit. All right, so what we have here is he gets it out, cuts the outside, he's plopping open the door. He looks over and he's like, oh God. So instead of switching cameras here, what we're going to have this one do is it's just going to sit there and kind of be a stationary angle. I kind of feel like maybe I want that angle a little higher. Maybe something like that. Kind of a little bit more pleasing. Kind of opens the world up. Maybe. I don't know. All right. So he looks over and he sees it. And maybe once he starts to turn. Let's try around 4 or 5. We're going to have him bolt over. And let's try right about here. And we're basically going to pan the camera. And since I want to, sorry about that. I just want to pan the camera. I'm actually going to use my parameters here so I don't mess with any other axes. As you know, with right-clicking and holding, you're changing like up and down and left and right and things. So we don't want to change the up and down. We just want to keep it like this. So in order to just affect one, I'm going to use this and have it churn a bit. I actually may want it to go down, actually. Let's see. Just slightly, something like that maybe. So basically what happens here, it does that. It does that, and Steve runs over, and we're probably going to have it cut as he's on his way over. So let's go ahead and have that one cut out. B camera's going to cut in. I'm going to go ahead and slap this guy on down over here. And it's going to give it a nice little foreboding type angle thing. I don't know. So let's go ahead and put our fade size up so we get a little more pleasant transitioning there. And let's open up our depth of field. Maybe try 57, something like that. That's not too bad. Actually, I feel like a wider shot like this would need a much more wide depth of field. So there we go. We'll put our range up 350. That's not too bad. Maybe, we'll stick with 350. All these things, it's very artistic. You can do it however you want. I have a problem with wider angle shots with extreme depth of field. It all depends on the scene. So, use your creativity as much as you like. I generally just prefer them to have a more open depth of field. So he runs over and he stops. And as you can see, this angle, I'm enjoying this angle, but I'm not liking what happens once he gets there. So right about when he goes to stop, we're going to go ahead and transition again. We're going to kill that camera, go back to A, and we're going to, let's do something like this. We're going to zoom in a bit. And with this, we're going to double click this one so it's highlighted. We can move a little bit further. And I want to position this camera so that it makes sense for when he stops. And what I might do here, something like this. Let's go ahead and change our depth of field here. Since this is a zoomed in angle, another thing to keep in mind, if you have any experience with real lenses, is the more zoomed in you are, then generally the much more shallow the depth of field is. So if you're doing a zoomed in shot like this, then to mimic a real camera, you'll want much shallower depth of field. That's generally what I do with my animations and things. So it's completely up to you what you want to do. Let's bring this down to 10. I really want to emphasize this depth of field here. So let's make it about 47, maybe 45. That looks all right. So now you get like the blur on the block here, the extreme blur on the background, and Steve is the only one in focus. There we go. Let's actually have it back up a couple of frames. Right about there, I think. All right. So it comes over, switches to him. He's running up. That angle, I probably wouldn't keep this angle. I would probably adjust this, but just for the sake of what we're doing here, I'll leave it. But anyway, it shows him running up a few different angles. He stops, and then he moves up right there. So like he's just looking at it for a second. And what you would do here is actually have Steve like a close-up on his face during this moment where he's like staring at it. But for now, to try and keep this moving, we're gonna avoid that. And let's just have, where's our creeper? Where is he? Oh, he's right there. All right. I'm gonna go ahead and have this angle here. We're gonna have like a little bit of an ominous angle as we show Steve. He's gonna be pounding away at the the diamonds there. Let's see. All right, so notice how like my depth isn't really having that much effect because of how wide my range is. So let's bring it down to 300. I think something like that isn't too bad. Let's make that the depth about 300 and the range about 300. That gives us a slight kind of out of focus look here close to the camera, and then it gives us plenty of depth there. So we're going to go with that. He stops, and then we're going to see him over there doing that. And then any time now, there goes Mr. Creeper. He shows up, and before Mr. Creeper gets too close, we're going to get him right about there. We're going to go ahead and have camera B kick out and camera A. Those are one frame apart. Let's put them back on top of each other. Camera A is going to become visible again, and we're going to, let's see what happens here. So as you may recall, we didn't line up Steve and the Creeper again, and it is not something that I went back and corrected. So this happens here where the Creeper doesn't really line up. So we're going to try to cover that up with our cinematography. Sorry this video is kind of long. I just want to try to cover as many basics as I can. If you guys have the attention span to stick around, then hopefully there are little tidbits of knowledge in here that you'll enjoy and learn from. All right? So I apologize for the link, but, you know, I can't talk at all, and stuff happens. All right. So what we want here is to try and use our camera angle. All right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do some crazy stuff. We're going to have an actual, like, a nice moving camera angle. So at this stage, we're going to have the Creeper. We're going to have him in focus. Let's bring this up to about 12 to make sure he's in focus there. You can see this nice focal plane we have. And we're going to move the camera. All right, to somewhere right about here. And to do this, I'm going to actually use this so I can make sure I get the move that I want. We're going to have the camera slide on around. Something like that. And it's going to churn. Maybe a little bit further. And perhaps maybe a slight away. Something like this. And then we'll churn it just a bit. And then maybe have it tilt up slightly. Something like that. Let's see what that looks like. All right, so for this one, we're going to want, let's go ahead and bring this back up. That's not too bad, but notice here how the thing is changing. So we're going to go ahead, first and foremost, we're going to go ahead and get things put into focus here. Let's bring it to about 70. That doesn't look too bad. Let's see, let's bring this down to 10 and see if we can bring it in to kind of get the diamonds a little more in focus. About 60. Bring that up to 11. I don't know. Maybe 10. Something like that. Let's save. And what I want to do is notice how the Creeper comes out of frame here. I definitely want to correct that. First, let me see. Let's make sure our angle works. All right, deselect. All right, notice how the camera, you know, I want to keep the Creeper in focus. I want him to be at the center of the screen. So right here is where he basically becomes the center again. But we kind of go off frame here a little bit, like he's over here. And with the movement at the beginning, technically I feel like it's more pleasing if he stays towards the middle of the screen. So what I'm going to do is put a keyframe there, and that's going to keep the smoothness of our movement. Like, you don't want to move these keyframes if you're going in a movement, right? Because you're going to mess up the timing of that movement. So we're only going to adjust the rotation here, and we're going to see what that looks like. Hang on. Boom! That actually doesn't look too bad. He kind of still goes a little bit further than I would want. Maybe right around here. We will adjust this a bit more, kind of keep him there. Yeah, that's not too bad. And maybe we would have it go, yeah, like around here, we would have the camera lifting up again. So we're going to select these two keyframes and actually have the camera pan down. And because I don't want to mess with my Y, yes, the Y, we're going to go into this so that we can adjust only the X. And we're going to have it pan down just a bit to kind of keep up with the creeper. There we go. It's a little bit bumpy, but it's not that bad. You get the idea. We also want to adjust our depth of field here. I got a monitor flickering to my side here, so it's kind of distracting me. Turn that off. All right. So we want to adjust this. We're going to go ahead and bring him back into focus. Back into focus. All right, let's see what that looks like. You see him flashing a bit, and oh, boom! All right, and then at that moment, right when he blows up, let's go ahead and have camera B come in, and we're going to try to mask that transition that we've got going on there. Let's do this. And we'll have this here for Steve. All right, so we want to go to right when that happens, right about there. All right, what I'm actually going to do here is copy this keyframe. And we're going to move it right about there. Something like that. So that way it'll stop. And then kind of give it a second and then he'll blow up. Maybe move it a little bit further back. Let's see what that does. That's kind of going to mess up. Yeah, all right. Let's see what I'm saying. Like if you create a keyframe in between two keyframes, it will adjust the timing of your movement. So you got to be mindful of that. We want this to be as smooth as possible to not reveal that there's a keyframe there. All right. Boop. And I feel like this isn't the angle I want. So let's go ahead and move this. And there we go. And we're going to leave it at that. And like you could just imagine like a cartoonish kind of like he blinks and like, what? And then credits. So let's go ahead and watch our finished animation here. Watch it from the very beginning with rendering and everything on. We're going to go ahead and move all this stuff. We're going to deselect everything if possible. All right. Let's see. Give me something to click, man. Hang on. Let's bring this up. We'll have it empty. There we go. All right. Now we're getting there. Come on. Let's bring this up so we can watch the whole thing. And let's click on the stop. That's going to bring us to our beginning. So you just imagine like with this still cam save, you have a fade in with your video editor. Steve gets up. He's like, oh man, I was sleeping so good. Camera's like, focus on Steve. Walks over, pulls out this. He's like, yeah, going outside. Gonna come over, mine these diamonds conveniently placed here. And that's exactly what he's doing. Until advanced camera movement. Boom! And Steve is all black. So I think that covers a lot of the principles of cinematography and how to do camera work within Mine-imator. Again, sorry about the extended length of this video, but I really wanted to make sure that I gave you guys all the knowledge I could muster for a relatively basic camera tutorial so that you can improve and have really good looking animations. And in case you were wondering why we do the dual camera setup, if you watch my original cinematography tutorial, then in moments where you have like the moving camera angle, like for instance the one we do here, when this transition happens, like when I would want to change camera angles, then you still have, like I would have to move camera A with an instant keyframe. Like I would have to change this to instant and then have 2 keyframes like this, for instance. In that moment, right there between those 2 keyframes, the camera would just freeze for a second. And you can remove that in your video editor, but if you use a 2-camera setup like this, it allows you to change camera positions without that little delay in between the 2 keyframes, because there's really nothing else you can do about that besides use 2 cameras or remember those little hiccups in your video editor and cut that frame out. So that's the beauty of the 2-camera setup, amongst maybe other practical uses, but that's one of the big reasons that I would recommend it. Any case, that is it for this tutorial. It has gone on long enough. Hope you found it helpful. Hope it makes your stuff better or something. Hope you learned something. Thanks for watching. Come back for the next one. I might be doing some more like kind of isolated tutorials about, how to do certain things. I just want to do a nice, like well-rounded, full animation tutorial to show you from beginning to end how I might go about making an animation. And so, with that, we have concluded. And that's it. I'm going to get going. Thanks for watching. Check out other videos that I've done, other Mine-imator tutorials or Let's Plays if you're into that sort of thing, and I will see you in the next video.